How can you even believe it at this point? How can you believe that every step of the way there has been a news story that has debunked whatever statement that SBF has said to the public, right? He's, oh, we had all these checks in place. No, they didn't. We did. I didn't push money from from FTX to Alameda. Nonsense. Like it's just another lie, but it's a fun lie because he gets to attack the lawyers, which is a fun scapegoat for everybody, apparently.
You've made it to Not Billable, the Lawtrades podcast that brings you bite-sized legal and business news updates, full event replays, and conversations with legal pros about what's going on behind the scenes every week. Stop the clock, put the timesheet down. It's time to get started.
Hey everybody, I'm Warren Pellick from Lawtrades, back with our first weekly news update of the year, joined, as always, by my good friend, Matt Margolis. Matt, how you doing, man?
Oh, man, just living the dream every day.
First one of the year. I love it.
Oh, my gosh, it really is the first one of the year.
Still living the dream in 2023.
I don't even know what year it is, man. I think
year of the
2020
dream.
is really exciting. Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the Zodiac, the year of the dream. That's what we're in. So let's take a look at what we're talking about for this update. So first of all, Sam Bankman-Fried back in the news. This time thrown his lawyers under the bus. So that's always a fun story we're going to talk about. We'll take a look at TikTok getting banned. And pay transparency becoming more and more common, the law of the land. Plus, we'll take a look at some pay cuts in big law, some spyware at the DEA, and kind of an update on a previous story. The law school rankings are getting a refresh. So let's jump in with this Sam Bankman-Fried story. So it's come out that his testimony, which he was supposed to give back in November, the day before he got arrested in the Bahamas, in it, he basically threw his lawyers from Sullivan and Cromwell under the bus and said that they pressured him with all sorts of crazy tactics into filing Chapter 11.
Like, come on, man. Like, come on. First off, his credibility is gone. There's no credibility here, right? Second, like, to throw your lawyers under the bus, the company was functionally insolvent. Not functionally. It was insolvent. It was completely insolvent.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, no. No, we were just going to get a fresh batch of financing. We were good, but then those damn pesky lawyers, like, come on, man, come on.
His story that literally 10 minutes. He says 10 minutes after he signed the Chapter 11 paperwork, he got an offer for billions of dollars of fresh capital. Like, where is this story coming from? You know, like it's insane.
How could I? That's the thing. Like, how can you even believe it at this point? How can you believe that every step of the way there has been a news story that has debunked whatever statement that SBF has said to the public, right? He's, oh, we had all these checks in place. No, they didn't. We did. I didn't push money from from FTX to Alameda. Nonsense. Like, it's just another lie, but it's a fun lie because he gets to attack the lawyers, which is a fun scapegoat for everybody, apparently, right?
Well,
it's just unbelievable.
I mean, if you're
as a lawyer, I really can appreciate when you do that.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone listening is very much in favor of this. So first of all, today he pled not guilty to the charges, which great. Like, I'm sure that's going to look great. But so walk me through this. If you're basically throwing your lawyers under the bus, you're pleading not guilty, all these things, does any of this kind of paint a good picture for the judge, for the jury? Like, how is this all going to look?
I mean, I don't know if that can be brought in. My lawyers maybe file for bankruptcy. I don't think it lends itself to any fact well, maybe it does, right? I'm not a criminal defense attorney, so if you are and you're watching this, please tell me if this is an admissible piece of evidence. I don't think it is. But I think for the bankruptcy, it definitely would leave a very bad taste in everyone's mouths. In bankruptcy, generally speaking, you're just trying to make deals, right? There's a finite pile of money, and you're trying to make sure that everyone is paid. And if everyone can't get paid, at least some sort of equitable scenario where some people get paid and some people don't get paid, but at least there's a decent distribution, and it's a deal game, right? Like, I'll make a deal here so you can make a deal here. And just to be like, lawyers screwed this up, I didn't even want to be in this, we shouldn't have even filed for bankruptcy. It definitely doesn't help. It makes everyone just be like, oh, cool, this guy just throwing the lawyers under the bus in a venue that's all lawyers.
Right. And it's kind of like starting to create this pattern where he had his media blitz where he was like, oh, I didn't know what was going on. This had nothing to do with me. I'm an innocent bystander in this, just like you all are. And then it became, well, my lawyers made me file Chapter 11 and we were totally fine and we were about to get billions in new funding. And now it's, well, I'm not guilty, even though the head of the co-founder of FTX and the CEO of Alameda Research both have pled guilty, right? And he's saying, I'm not guilty. It just doesn't. It paints a picture of a man who is either completely out of touch, or I don't know what his strategy is.
I don't know either. It's just, I'd like to think it's like a PR stunt. Everything is a PR move, right? Everything. But I don't know. It seems, at some level, it seems incredibly frantic. I would be frantic as well in this scenario, right? But it's just really hard to say. It's definitely a bizarre situation.
Yeah.
Especially at every turn where there's a new story that's quickly debunked.
100%.
Or not quickly debunked, but it's debunked. So it's we'll talk about SBF clearly in the future, but this is just a nice addition. And if you're listening to this, I'm being sarcastic. Please don't blame your lawyers.
No.
Please don't blame your lawyers.
No. And if you're going to go after Sullivan and Cromwell, you got a heavy fight ahead of you.
Make sure that's an iron tight case.
Yeah. Wild. All right. Well, as you said, I'm sure we will be talking about this for many episodes to come. Well, let's move on then. The next story here is, at the very end of last year, Congress passed its latest spending bill, which was signed into law, and part of that spending bill was banning TikTok on all federal devices, which is some 4 million employees who have now cannot download legally TikTok onto the device. That raises questions. Is this just scapegoating? Is this part of a bigger political, boogeyman thing? There's a lot going on here with this ban.
Oh, absolutely. I think other government, but state level. I think state level agencies have done something similar. I don't quite remember what state. For some reason, I keep thinking it's Utah. I'm probably wrong. But I do know that other states have at least done something similar. It does raise a good question. Is this another scapegoat where we're utilizing this big bad social media platform that does disseminate messages that aren't always great, right? I've seen plenty of financial information being disseminated through, especially like life insurance, folks that sell life insurance or financial advising. I've seen so much of that be disseminated through TikTok that's harmful. It's harmful information at best. So at least I understand some of the concerns. I understand the concerns, obviously, that ByteDance, the parent company, is owned, or at least has affiliations with the Chinese government, which has its own concerns. But I agree at a level, it almost feels like all these other social media companies and everyone else is like, this is a really good company to just kind of throw a couple jabs, throw a couple punches, and make sure, my constituency is happy. So now, at least my thoughts on it.
Of course, and the propaganda message, right? That you're seeing all sorts of things on misinformation, disinformation, propaganda is being pushed on TikTok theoretically. There's also the argument to be made that data privacy and tracking and spyware is coming through TikTok now. Forbes had a report back in, I believe it was November, that ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, confirmed that 3 of Forbes' journalists were illegally or very unethically tracked by ByteDance, and that is kind of like pushing this narrative that, hey, we don't really trust this, especially if you're a federal employee, you can be spied upon. But like you said, plenty of data privacy rights groups are saying, Twitter does this, Facebook does this, Uber does this. Everybody does it. So just to say that TikTok is doing it alone is, you're right, not exactly correct.
And I get it. I get the argument, right? Like that a foreign power is the one actually doing it as opposed to these companies that are technically domiciled in the United States. But that being said, are foreign powers buying this information? Are they buying this data from these players? I don't know. They might be. They might not be. They might be getting it completely other ways. But I tend to believe that other foreign powers are taking advantage of this data, this information, and utilizing it in any way, shape, and form. So, again, it's something that you will see. I think you'll probably see a push going forward this year. Maybe it's just a speaking point, maybe a soundbite, maybe it's actual legislation that they think will not pass. But I do think you will see legislation trying to ban TikTok in its entirety this year.
It's a great way to win over youth votes, is to ban TikTok.
I think President Biden like had a bunch of TikTok stars on for
Really?
something. It might have been for climate change. I think it was a climate change or something. And it's like, can you imagine where it's like, thank you everyone. TikTok made you guys great. Anyway, so we're gonna ban.
We're
TikTok.
banning it. Yeah.
Just a heads up.
That won't come back to bite anybody, but hey, I'm not a politician. All right, well, let's move on. Yeah, it is. It is what it is. The last major news story we'll cover today is a new law that went into effect on New Year's Day, both in Washington and California, which was if you're posting any sort of job opening to one of those two states, you have to post the salary range of the job itself, which is kind of this push for pay equity,
Awesome.
for pay transparency. Right. It's kind of a major win for the labor rights movement, which has been picking up a lot of steam over the last year or two.
That is awesome. And I think, in an employment context, you're going to want that. I mean, I feel like that's always a fight amongst folks. Like, how much does this job pay? I feel like it's just generally a gripe for workers, right? How much does this job pay? Why am I wasting my time interviewing for this job? And what is it advertised as such? And what are other folks in the same realm? What are they making? Now,
Right.
If the job is posted, like the pay is posted straight up, right, immediately, it may help stop the gender disparity, right? Because you're like, well, this job is going to pay $150,000, $160,000, right?
Right.
And whether you're whatever gender you identify with, that is what you get paid. That is a huge step forward. That really would be a great. And then selfishly, like when I apply for jobs, right? Whenever I was in the job market. I don't know what you were, but that would irk the hell out of me, right? When you're like, I wonder how much this job pays. And you apply for it, you go to the interview and they're like, this pays X. And you're like, that's awesome. I spent a lot of time interviewing for this job. I do not want this.
Or just in the application itself, right? The application itself would say, what compensation are you looking for? I don't know. What are you paying? Right? If I ask
and then you're betting against yourself, right?
Exactly. If I ask for, 100K and you ask for 150K, and we have the same application, who are they going to hire? If both of us are asking for within the range of 150K, yeah, it makes it much more equitable.
Absolutely. It's a great move. It's definitely a great move. And obviously, I would say this, I think if you're a larger company, it reminds me kind of like GDPR compliance. Like if you're a larger company and you're complying, you generally you apply your compliance across the board because it's easier. Right. I would hope to say that like bigger companies in an employment context would be like, I have to comply with California and Washington, and I think maybe there are a few other states that have this.
New York City and
transparency laws.
Colorado.
Yeah. Colorado I think has had it for a while. Like to comply with all these jurisdictions, it's better to just cross the board. Here is what pay looks like.
Right,
and
which
again,
is a huge win.
I think that's nothing positive across the board.
100%. So to kind of dovetail off that point, one of the smaller kind of news stories we're looking at this week is it looks like non-equity partners of counsel and associates at Nelson and Mullen are about to get an unpleasant surprise with their compensation as the firm is kind of retooling their compensation model. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I think an internal memo had gone out. This is from above the law that basically said, hey, look, we've raised salaries and we've provided these bonuses over the last couple of years. And because of the potential negative economy in 2023, a potential recession, right, we're going to change our compensation structures. And what it effectively looks like is, my understanding based on these documents and the above the law, is a lower base. And then you have this earn up bonus. So effectively think of it like this. Like let's say you're making round numbers, $100,000. And then there's going to be extra bonuses based on actually how much you collect. Now, if you're listening to this and you're maybe an in-house attorney or you're not an attorney altogether, there's a difference between what you bill and what you collect. You could potentially collect 100% of what you bill. That's awesome. That's unbelievable. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes there's write-offs. Sometimes people dispute the parts of the bill. Sometimes you can't collect because there's a liquidity problem with your client. A lot of reasons, right? A lot of reasons. Or there's discounts. Sometimes there's clients that actually get discounts from prompt payment or whatever. So it's, as an associate, for example, I would be pretty unhappy because a lot of the time the associates aren't handling collections. They're not my clients, right?
And
I'm an
their
associate working a
salaries,
file for a partner.
right? And their
Yeah.
salaries are not tied to collections. It's independent of that,
Exactly.
correct? Yeah.
I have to bill. You've told me I got to bill X amount of hours. I'm going to bill those hours. That's it.
Right.
So it's definitely a change, and I wouldn't be thrilled. I wouldn't be thrilled if I was an associate of counsel or non-equity
Sure.
partner.
And it seems to me that over the last few weeks, months, we've been talking a lot about all these kind of different changes, at big law firms in compensation and pay and on and on. Is this normally what happens during an economic downturn, or is we're seeing kind of a new trend where firms are rethinking how compensation is even handled?
That's a really good question.
I mean, were these stories
know.
being talked about in 2009? Was things like this going on?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. So like what happened then, what you were seeing is like straight up, like your job was taken away, right? Like you just didn't have a job.
Right.
Or they would defer it for a number of years and they paid you out some amount of money, right? And maybe that was it. You just kind of had to find another job.
Yeah.
I would bet there probably was something similar, right? Reduction of salaries, or like some sort of like you're getting X amount of dollars, but if we blow it out of the water, like we'll return you to original numbers. Maybe it makes sense. Where I'm concerned here is like we're not necessarily in the economic downturn. Granted, you're seeing it in tech. You're seeing tech valuations come down.
Sure.
But we're talking
Just
about a
a
full
fear
service
of.
shop. And a lot
Yeah.
of these firms, exactly, like these are full service shops working in a variety of different industries. So for me, it's just, and this isn't, I'm not picking on Nelson Mullins, I'm picking on the entire industry. It's odd to, you're right, go off of fear when one industry is really getting affected presently, not the entire global economy.
Right.
So
Right.
that's where I think you see the difference here. We're probably in 08, 09, 10, the sky is actually falling. Here right. you have someone screaming that the sky could be falling, and making drastic changes as a result.
Are you aware of any tightening in hiring out of law schools? Like, is it just in compensation and how that's being handled, or is it also across the board hiring
I haven't
freezes?
heard it. Sure, I haven't heard it, but I bet, right? Like I would gather that like there's these OCI processes. I'm sure some of these schools have been notified by law firms like, hey, like we're going to slow down a little bit. You can't like I think it was Cooley had laid off X amount of people. Like you can't just like go amongst your traditional hiring processes after laying off all of these junior associates. So I'm sure, and I can't confirm that, but based on what I've seen in the market, I would be shocked otherwise.
Yeah. And again, if you're listening and you have some insight on that, please let us know. Shoot us a comment.
Please.
Something. All right. Well, another one of the smaller stories we're looking at, and this one's kind of crazy. Turns out the DEA has been using some Israeli spyware called Graphite. I don't know if a lot of you would remember Paragon, who was kind of this Israeli spyware company. So the DEA has been using this tool Graphite, which, according to the New York Times, enables the agency to penetrate the mobile phones of its targets and extract messages, videos, photos, and other content. Now, the DEA is saying they're only using that right against foreign operatives.
Sure.
But who's to say? And so Congress is very concerned about this and is kind of opening up an investigation into these hacking tools.
I swear, if the DEA is stealing my memes, I'm going to be so pissed. I'm going to be so upset. All of a sudden, the DEA's like Twitter handle starts posting things that I've posted previously. I'm like, I know what you're doing here.
Now we know
took
how it
those
works.
screenshots of those tweets on my phone. In all seriousness, that's I understand Congress's concern, right? You can always, you could say it, but like, how do I confirm that? How do I confirm it? Which I think goes to this presently lack of trust we have in certain federal agencies. Now, I'm not saying I lack this trust, but I do think over the last few years that sentiment has grown and grown and grown. So doesn't surprise me. And if they really have been, that's frightening. If they haven't, it's still a pretty wild app or tool that they're utilizing.
And even if they haven't, if the DA is using this right now for foreign operatives or for whomever, and then another agency gets a hold of it, and then they start using it, or even local authorities start using it against American citizens, the genie's out of the bottle, right?
That's a fair point. Again, and then everyone's stealing my memes, and I can't let that happen.
We got to rush on your memes. That's what we got.
I gotta move fast.
I'm gonna turn them out quicker, man. All right, well, let's end with something that's a bit of an update to something we talked about pretty recently, which is the boycott of the U.S. News and World Report's law school rankings. You'll remember Harvard, Yale, Stanford, most of the T20 was pulling out of this ranking system, and they've just announced, U.S. News and World Report, that their spring rankings, which will be for 23-24, will be revamped and will take into consideration a lot of the points that people were unhappy with, which is, they will now start to account for graduates who go into public service or who pursue advanced degrees, and will rely less on surveys of reputation and student debt burden, which kind of historically led these schools to favor wealthier applicants.
It makes me laugh that they got rid of the survey of reputation which I do think it's a part of this, was that uproar from all of these conservative judges, these FedSoc judges that were saying, like, we're not going to hire these law clerks from Yale institution harbors this yada, 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 yada mindset. And it's really funny to see, like, we're going to get rid of the survey of reputation. I'm sure Yale was happy about that because I know that was a big issue for them. Otherwise, it is good to see that the rankings are changed. I kind of think they're ridiculous anyways. And I say that in a sense of, like, once you're out of, like, I think it matters really if you're, like, obviously in, like, the T10, T14. But when you go to a regional school like myself, I went to Florida State University College of Law, it didn't really matter, right? Just a regional school, if it had good reputation, it was, I guess, in the rankings generally, that's fine. Like, when I say in the rankings, I mean, like, somewhere in the mix, like, it's not, like, unranked. That's all that really mattered to me. So, I mean, I'll tell you candidly, as, like, a regional law school alumni, whatever.
Well, maybe the rankings will change and FSU will be somewhere else in the rankings. But
if they get to number one,
there you go.
We're deleting the podcast.
Right. There you go.
Deleting it. I'm going to refilm this and say those are the greatest rankings of all time. Big deal. Really big deal.
You heard it here first. Amazing. All right. Well, thanks as always, Matt, for talking me through these, and thank you for everybody who listens to this. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure, and thank you for tuning in. And if you like the podcast, you like the newsletter, obviously leave us a comment and let us know how we did.
Absolutely. All right. Well, until next week. Thanks again. Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out also on LinkedIn and Twitter to keep up to speed with what we're doing. Catch you on the next one.